Hello, welcome to Dulcimoon Talk number 42. Today, live and in person, in the flesh, with Heidi Muller. We are in Oregon right now. We are at the Dulcimer Week in the Wallowas camp. And that's the camp that Heidi has been running for, well, you were telling me this is the 12th year of the actual camp, but there were some retreats before
There were a couple of retreats. We started in 2011, actually.
Amazing.
And we just didn't have it in 2020.
Yeah. Right. Yes. We're familiar with that. And today's Hawaii theme day, so that's fun. We're enjoying the camp for sure. We like to kind of get started with hearing your origin story of how you got into playing the dulcimer, and so you can pick it up wherever in history makes sense to tell us about it.
It might make sense to start further back that I played guitar since I was 11.
Okay.
And I pretty much taught myself with the help of some other people, but I always had an ear for it. And my brother taught me to do Travis picking. And so I learned all the folk stuff at the time, which was in the middle of folk music, where just was becoming commercial with James Taylor and Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell and all of that, and then I was singing with guitar. So that made me happy for a really long time, and I didn't think I needed another instrument. But my college roommate came to visit me, and my housemate was making instruments, and he had made a mountain dulcimer, and she decided she wanted one, and he made one for her. And she was from Boston, so she ended up taking lessons from Lorraine Lee, now Lorraine Hammond. So I got introduced to Lorraine Lee's music, and my friend Gail Finney, went on to become a professional singer, now songwriter and dulcimer player. And she played a sun hearth, and I ended up with one, but in the meantime I decided to get one, and she helped me get one from a music store there. It was made by Jay Leibowitz, who was probably a name. I think he's connected with Leo Kretzner and perhaps the Pacific Rim Project and people. He didn't go on to be well known, but for a while he was well known in dulcimer playing. I had that dulcimer, and once I saw what Gail was doing, and I learned what Lorraine was doing, and it was 4 equidistant strings.
Right.
Then I wanted a sun hearth, and I eventually got one. But I had to teach myself to play because I lived in Seattle, and there wasn't anybody there really doing this. And I ended up taking a few classes that a fellow named Mark Filler gave in Seattle. He just knew a few people who wanted to learn, and he had us get together like for 5 Monday nights, and he would play records, and he would acquaint us with dulcimer people. And
that's cool.
A different tuning every week, and then say, okay, that's it, I don't have time to teach you anymore. And I went home and scratched my head and thought, well, I can't do all of this all at once, so I went to DAD. And as soon as I could, I tried to play 4 equidistant strings, but I found that relating to a dulcimer after playing guitar, where the bass is in a different place, your finger picking, your thumb is no longer doing alternating bass, your thumb's doing melody. I dove in and made my goal to play Lo How a Rose Ere Blooming by Christmas. This was 3 months after I got my dulcimer. And I made myself perform it, but I didn't know the instrument really well. So I had to rewind some. I took time to learn a 3-string configuration, and then went back to 4-string after that. And then I worked for Dusty Strings in Seattle that made hammered dulcimers and harps, and was able to get a sun hearth through them. And I would have brought it today, but it's at home somewhere. So, and I'm at camp.
Right.
Yeah. So
you've got a few things going on this week.
And because I sing, you know, I really loved the four equidistant chords and got into finger picking and all that. I started to go to contra dances and learned about fiddle tunes.
Yes.
And it started to really grab me in that I'd be going down the contra dance line and I'd be asking people, what's this tune? What's this tune? And you know, you twirl for a minute and mostly you said, I don't know. And
yeah,
then
nobody knows the name of the tune.
And it would keep me up, you know, way past midnight trying to play. I would try to play the tunes on my dulcimer when I got home.
Yeah.
So that's how I got bit by the fiddle tune bug.
The fiddle tune bug. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
I was already playing fiddle tunes when I learned about contra dances, and then I was like all in about dancing and playing the tunes. And then, you know, every new kind of tune would be like, what's the dance that goes with the tune? There's something really magical about seeing the two together and how it all. Yeah, that's cool. I love that. So when did you and Bob meet?
At a Northeast Regional Folk Alliance in 2000.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a dulcimer on the table, and it was the only dulcimer there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I talked to him, because he had a dulcimer.
Well,
but we didn't really get together till 2003, and that was at the Ohio Valley Gathering in Lexington. Yes.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. So singing folk songs, playing fiddle tunes, dulcimer, songwriting, you were doing all of that through that whole time. How did education, teaching, and that kind of play into it?
Okay, so I performed with dulcimer, and somebody had come to me pretty early on who had been, you know, coming to see me play open mics and stuff. She wanted to learn, and I basically shooed her away and say, no, I don't know how to teach, sorry. And she didn't leave me alone. And so I started trying to give her lessons. I managed somehow. Then I learned to teach by doing, really. And it took me a long time. I couldn't read music. So my first tab didn't have any notation in it.
Yeah.
And then the only problem is if people didn't know the song, then, you know, they couldn't figure out how to play it.
Right. How does it sound if you just have a string of numbers?
And actually it's what's interesting is bringing up a dame from the folk community going back. I taught workshops in Winstead, Connecticut, where the folk craft instruments were made way back. And I handed out tab that didn't have notation on it, and it was Dallas Klein who took me aside and said, well, this is great, but you really need to put some notes in because we don't know how to play it. So that helped me ramp up just a little. And it was really by writing out dulcimer tab that I had to learn about the staff. I could do everything by ear. And when you can do everything by ear, a lot of times you don't care what people want to read, you know, the notation. So I had to learn to do that, and then I did. I'm
a little bit jealous of people who can just naturally do it by ear. But I suppose, you know, when you're talking about that and like the notes didn't make that much sense, the notes have always been the thing that makes sense to me. So yeah, we just all have different ways in.
Yeah.
And strengths.
So then I decided to make a book of Bill Staines' music.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any of the skills to put it on, you know, in print. So Heidi Saragoni helped me and took my handwritten music, and I would send it to her, and then she would generate it and send it back. And eventually I learned how to do that too.
Yeah. Wow. When was that?
It was
process?
That was around 2002, I think.
Okay.
You know, there's another thing that's interesting. The dulcimer that I brought over here today was made by Bill Van Dusen, and in 1995 1995, roughly, we had a thing on the internet which felt new at that time, 93 to 94, 95 maybe.
Yeah.
We had Sweet Music Index, which was the place to gather dulcimer information. It was like, it became an archive.
Yeah.
And instructors all around the country were contacted and asked to write little articles and put them in. And I wrote one on how to change strings. You know, a written description of it. And so we had this thing where you'd get a downloaded digest at the end of the day of people's emails. And the idea got floated towards the end of 1995 about why don't we get together. And there was it was Lawrence and Beverly, I'm missing their last name, they're in Lawrence, Kansas, or were. They ended up in Mountain View, Arkansas. Anyhow, and Alan McFarland.
Yeah, he's still in Lawrence, Kansas. Yes.
Well, the idea was there's a bed and breakfast in Valley Falls. Let's get together. Who wants to come?
Wow.
And so in January, I said, I'll fly in. And I got picked up.
Yeah.
And gosh, there were hammered players. There were mountain players. And we ended up, because the hammered players were so loud, the mountain players went into a bedroom and piled onto the bed and pulled everything in, and we all swapped instruments. And I played a Bill Van Dusen dulcimer, and I liked it, but I wasn't looking for a dulcimer.
Right,
and at the end of that weekend, he told me, you really like this dulcimer, and I made it for myself, and I should clean it up for you, but I'm going to send it to you. And you should keep it as long as you want, and if you want it, you just send me some money or we'll work it out.
Wow.
And he did this only knowing my address and how he could contact me on Sweet Music. And at the end of January, it showed up. And I wrote a song on it, and it became August, and I couldn't let it go. So I made arrangements to hang on to it.
Wow.
But you see, the community was starting way back then. And one of the things that was so cool, and looking back on it, the dulcimer players who are so tied to traditional music embraced technology really early.
Yeah.
And so everybody got connected, which led to things like festivals more, and it led to the DAD tuning spreading more. You see, this was like the beginning. It reminds me of the mycelium mushroom stuff that goes on underneath all the trees.
Yeah.
It's like networks starting, and they sprout up here and there, and people grab onto it, and pretty soon you had a community.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
And I believe the Sweet Music Index archive might still be at baremeadow.com or baremeadowdulcimers.com. Dwayne Wilder's.
Okay.
Yeah. It's out there somewhere. Nothing gets lost on the internet.
Well.
Unless maybe you take it down somehow.
Yeah, I suppose it probably still exists somehow, somewhere in
I think it's there.
In the dark web someplace.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, by the time I was looking on the internet for things, everything dulcimer was the forum thing that existed. And then that all kind of got morphed eventually over into Facebook groups.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was awesome. You know, so I ended up performing in Boonville, Missouri, a couple of times, and Bill Van Dusen would come down, and you know, I'd have him play a tune and stuff.
And was that Kathy Barton and Dave Pear? The connection there was with them?
No,
or was that, what was your connection?
It wasn't.
There?
I didn't really know them at the time.
Okay.
There was a fellow who had he had restored a hall. I believe it was called Turner Hall. Just a local guy, and somehow I believe it came through the radio guy whose name was Lee. See, I'm sorry, I didn't brush up on any of this old information before the interview.
It's okay.
I just can't think of his name. Lee Ruth? I think his name might be Lee Ruth. He had a radio show in Columbia, Missouri.
Okay.
And I think he was playing my stuff. Because back then we mailed CDs to people.
Yes.
And the connection, I think, was made there, and then I ended up playing there. and then Bill would come. So more networking, just folky networks.
Yeah,
you
right,
know.
Right. Yeah, the folk networks and the bluegrass networks and the dulcimer networks, and they all kind of overlap each other in some really fun ways. Like, I haven't ever been to NERFA, but I've been to some of the Folk Alliance conferences, and it's always like, is there anyone else like me here? You know, kind of question.
Yes.
So I can see how there being a dulcimer was like, oh, I found somebody. Tell me about all the recordings that you have. How many recordings have you done? Tell me all about that.
Well, I didn't meet Bob until 2000, and I had put out my 5th recording by then. So I started recording in 1985, and I didn't feel like I knew dulcimer well enough to use it on that very first one, and I was just getting my feet wet. It came out as a cassette, and I wasn't even writing songs that much. I was covering songs. Yeah. So
I have a cassette tape in my history too.
Woohoo! So I didn't really start using it on recordings until 1989, and that was Matters of the Heart. Then I did Cassiopeia in 92, and Giving Back in 96, and Gypsy Wind in 2001, and then I met Bob, and we did Seeing Things in 2005, and Light the Winter's Dark in 2011, Dulcimer Moon in 2013, Up Hurricane Creek in 2017. And then in the meantime, because of Bob, he got me to West Virginia. So I was living in Seattle for a million years, like almost 20 years. And I was a concert producer, and I taught, and I also worked a day job because I would go broke all the time from relying on music. It was up and down. I learned that students will quit for the summer and you won't get any notice, and suddenly your income goes kablooey. So I became like a temporary secretary, a temp. But I went back and forth, did all music, worked, did music at night, stuff like that. But I'm trying to pull it back to where was I going?
So you had been on the West Coast, and then you met Bob.
I was in Seattle.
And you got into
so I ended up back east because of family stuff, and that's how I met him. And then he helped me work with kids, and I had never done that, and I ended up doing that. My first gig was teaching songwriting to 7th and 8th graders in a school in the coal fields of West Virginia at 7:30 in the morning.
Oof.
And they didn't want me there.
Yeah.
And they were half asleep. And the teachers didn't help me very well.
Because they were just hoping for an hour to plan their schedules or something. Probably.
I think there was a problem with me being from New Jersey. There is a certain feeling that they didn't, folks who've been there a long, long time don't trust people from the outside. And we were doing local history, trying to pull local history stories out and write songs about them. And by the end of the week, a couple of people helped out, and we ended up with a song. But I did history work through the Big Ugly Community Center on Big Ugly Creek in West Virginia, and wrote songs with them, did some quilting projects with them, gathered local history. A few years later, it turned into a book called Patchwork Dreams, and I ended up learning how to work with kids. Bob and I co-founded a program called Music Mentors in Charleston, West Virginia, and we were in the city working with inner city kids in an after-school program, and we brought in cardboard box dulcimers, and the kids made them first. We had a camp thing, made them, then we taught them. We aimed for 2nd grade up, but they gave us kindergarten up, so we worked with from there to about middle school age. And we would teach them all by ear, and that worked really great. Then I ended up getting into a program that went further down in the coal fields to teach guitar. and they allowed us to go into a middle school and take the kids out of the classrooms one by one into, you know how they'll have, some places have a teacher's lounge and some places just have a room big enough for a copier and a coffee machine. And that's where I taught my guitar. And then did dulcimer in the after school down there. Okay. Now the interesting thing is, this was in the town of Kermit, which became famous not too many years ago for the opioid crisis. They ended up only a few hundred people in population, but in that very neighborhood were the pharmacies that were selling hundreds of thousands of pills. And some of the kids talked about their parents being passed out when they got home and being passed around to other relatives, you know. So we did this, and we felt like we did a lot of good. And in the after school, they purchased a bunch of, or the program purchased a bunch of gingers that we could use with the kids. So, you know, ginger dulcimers.
Right.
So that was really cool.
That's amazing.
We did a lot of work with kids, but I have to say I went into it and I was scared to death at the beginning. I thought the kids were going to eat me up. But they didn't actually do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, kids are pretty cool once you learn how to tap into the part of them that's cool and not the part of them that eats people.
Yeah. So eventually then I really wanted to get back to the Northwest.
Yeah.
And so we ended up coming back, but Seattle had become rather inaccessible, very expensive.
Yeah.
I wasn't really prepared to keep doing day jobs anymore like that. So we had a friend who lived in Enterprise, Oregon, which is right near here. And we got to know people. We started to come out every year and give concerts.
Okay.
We would do a little tour. And then we got to know everybody, and they said, why don't you move here? And so we did.
Sweet.
And that's how this all started here.
Yeah. So you started it with a little retreat. Was that just sort of gathering people in interest to see?
No.
Tell me about the origins here.
There was a writer's camp here called Fish Trap, and they used to meet at this very camp. Okay. And Bob would teach dulcimer. He would just like put up posters and have a dulcimer workshop in the other town.
Yep.
And we got people. Wow. And we'd bring a big U-Haul box full of box dulcimers. And then he'd teach them. And then, there's a fiddle tunes camp here that happens the week after ours, and they teach fiddle, banjo, guitar, mandolin, bass. It's in this county, but a distance away. Bob got asked to teach guitar and mandolin there, and in 2011, I got asked to teach a dulcimer class for the first time. We ended up with 26 people. We had half people who never had touched it and half people who'd played for a number of years.
Yeah.
And I had to make it work.
Yeah, that's tricky.
And it did work somehow. And the next year we decided we'd take a chance on trying a camp. And this Methodist camp where we meet was a real friendly place. Yeah. And the only week they didn't have booked was July 4th week, and there wasn't another festival in the country during July 4th week. Yeah. So we tried it, and some of the people came from the past class, and we brought out Stephen Seifert, and then I taught and Bob taught. And then the next year we brought in Susan Trump with Stephen, and I kept teaching for several years until the camp kept growing, and it was harder to do the admin work and then the teaching too. Yeah. And I really loved the teaching, but I was getting late to class every day because of questions coming in and stuff. So then we figured out a way to have 3 instructors come from outside, and then Bob took the beginners. And it's been that way ever since.
Yeah. It seems to be working great. I'm having a great time.
Good.
Yeah. You want to play a tune?
Sure.
Since we're here live and in person, we can actually play a tune. So it's we're recording this on the 3rd of July. We'll be posting it next week.
Okay.
But since it's about the 4th of July, we thought we'd play the 4th of July song, right?
Yeah, and I'm playing my Bill Van Dusen red maple dulcimer that I fell in love with a zillion years ago. So, let's see. How many times are we going to do the foot?
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll fill it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about finding you. How do we find you these days? Website?
Okay.
Camp information?
HeidiMuller.com. Now, my last name is spelled Muller. So it's HeidiMuller.com. The Dulcimer camp info is WallowaDulcimer.com. Now, a lot of folks don't know about Wallowa, so it's spelled WALLOWA. And you can email me from those places. We have Dulcimer Week in the Wallowas on Facebook. Mm-hmm. We have Heidi Muller Music on Facebook as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably enough. People can find me. Yeah.
And you teach private lessons on Zoom and private lessons in person and camp, and you do all
and
you
quarantine.
Do all of that.
North Georgia.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so can I ask you one more question as a sort of I'm always curious about people's sort of creative processes and how music is sort of part of your life, and what are the doors and windows and places and things that, so do you have like creative practices, or do you have things that you use as your like muse for songwriting or creating, or do you have like I always write at this time every single day? Can you just tell us a little about like how creativity is a part of your life?
I never could follow the Nashville idea of writing every day. Mm-hmm. I'm more spontaneous. However, long ago I learned that I could edit, and I learned that I could go back into a song, So a lot of us, when we start writing songs, it hits you like lightning, and you go, oh, I have an inspiration.
Yeah.
And you sit down and you write a song, and then you go, nothing must ever touch this song because it is so pure and perfect. And then after a while you learn that maybe it wasn't really pure and perfect, and that you should work with it.
It came to you as a really good idea, but that doesn't mean it's fully formed.
Right, right. And so you can get back into it. You can even if it helps if you were under pressure to do this, I find, like a deadline pressure, but you can make yourself get back in and unlock the thing that started you on it, which that took a long time to figure that out. And once I knew that, it made it easier to write things that weren't necessarily finished and walk away. I have sat in my chair for 3 hours afraid to move. You get really tired, trying to write stuff. But I get, with dulcimer, I get syncopated ideas. I like that sort of calypso strum, and things come to me a lot like that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I do write a lot on guitar, but with dulcimer, I get ideas for things. I used to get ideas more for tunes than now. I just walk around the kitchen and something would pop into my head. So what I found, and this, a lot of people say this, if you get an idea, you should either sit down and do it or be willing to let it float away, and it may never come back. It likely won't be there tomorrow morning. You need to pursue it. It often comes at an inconvenient time. I keep a little notebook in the car, and I've had to jot down things while I was driving. I shouldn't tell you that.
I have a surprising number of recordings on my phone that are like me with a towel in my hair because the inspiration came in the shower. And as soon as I hop out of the shower, I'm like, quick, record it.
Okay, well, that reminds me that when I'm working on a song, voice memo is my friend on my iPhone. Yeah. I can keep melodies are the things that'll fall away. Okay. Right? And sometimes they fall away in just a few minutes time. Like you get a run of notes and you try to recreate it, and then something happened and you've forgotten it, so that helps a lot.
Yeah.
These days I kind of write in spurts. Like I haven't written anything for a while, and I go, I really ought to write something again. And then I start thinking, what am I thinking about? What's on my mind? And one of the things I found is that if I just pick up the instrument and noodle around, sometimes the topic in my mind falls out then. And for me, it always worked to get the melody and the words together. I'm not so good at matching them up later or creating a thing later. So yeah, I'm happiest when it all happens at once. Yeah.
But then you give yourself permission to go back and edit it.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And I work on things.
I mean, that's one of the things I have really appreciated about my favorite of your songs is how polished they are, right? I can hear in them the amount of time and energy you spend to like get each syllable to line up rhythmically the way it should, and that requires making sure the rhyme structure is right and the right word is in the right place, and how clever some of the lyric patterns are and things that they
thank you, but you see, it's there's an element of fun in craft. You see, songcraft. Okay, one of the things I have tried to do is not repeat a word. I mean, those things would be in there, but I catch myself if I repeat a word that is it matters in some way, or even if it's sort of medium, like between prepositions and important words, I still go, oh, can I find a different word so I don't have to say it the same way?
Yeah.
Craft, to me, is it's fun. It's a challenge. It's like playing a game, and it's much more now than it ever was years ago.
Yeah.
I feel really good when I finally lock it in, and then I feel finished.
Yeah. I love that.
There's not usually a rush. And unless I am writing because I have a gig coming up and I have to have something new. That's, pressure helps.
Yeah. Right. Deadlines sometimes make our brains get in gear.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, probably a year or so ago, I sat in on you talking about the songwriting process at one point, and the thing that you said to me was, you got to just take it seriously. You got to take all the ideas seriously. You got to treat them like they're real. And I have not necessarily gone and written songs as a result of that, but it has helped me prioritize valuing all those little ideas instead of just being like, oh yeah, I had another little idea, whatever, it's gone again. But to go like, maybe this idea is something.
You know, you can write songs about anything. And if you go listen to a lot of people, you'd be surprised what they write about. You know, you can take the tiniest concept and develop it, and it might turn into a funny song or something lighthearted. It doesn't have to be a big important message, but you might get that too. You know, so yeah, I wrote a song. It's not on Dulcimer, but I wrote a song some months ago about everything I've ever done wrong, and basically saying I'll do better next time. And now it's like a zipper song where I get, you know, where you use a certain part of it keeps coming around, but you also change the words, and they make everybody sing along with me. And I was a psych major long ago, and I feel like it's my little therapy song. I get this whole room of people to consider everything they ever did wrong and how they felt bad about it, but they'll do better next time. And by the end of the song, we've all forgiven each other, and it's like, wow. Anyhow, but that's not yet on Dulcimer. Sorry. I still play guitar.
Well, I will look forward to someday hearing that song. Yes, for sure. Okay. Well, I know that your schedule is busy because you run a camp here, so I will not keep you much longer, but I do want to say just thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's so great that you and DJ could be here, actually. You know?
It is great. DJ's in the background.
I don't have to just be that little window on the screen.
Yeah, it's really nice to get to do it in real life, as we say. Everybody here has bodies. Not just faces and fingers. We can see faces and fingers on Zoom, you know. But
what's our next talk, Darren?
Oh, do I remember what our next talk is? It's scheduled.
Isn't it Alice?
Eyeless Mears. Yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Eyeless Mears is our next talk in a couple of weeks. She's a hammer dulcimer player. She plays hammer dulcimer at the Butterfly Palace in Branson. Is a national champion. So, yeah, look forward to that one coming up soon, too.
That should be fun.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.